This video is the second half of a two-part video on the processing window. In the last video, we looked at the components of the processing window and how to start and stop a program. In this video, we'll see what happens when your program has a problem and how to fix it. And to wrap up, we'll see how to save our work. Let's start with a small change to our program from the last video. I'll tell it to print the letter E after the other letters, and I'll run it again. So I'll go to the Run button and click. I get a new graphics window as usual, and if I look down here in the output, I get Hello World ABCDE. Beautiful. Now suppose I want to have it print the letter F as well. So I'll type the command to tell it to print F. But if we look down in the output, we don't have Hello World ABCDEF. The reason why is because at this moment, processing is not paying any attention to the editor window. In fact, we can type anything we want in the editor, and it doesn't care. Processing won't be happy if we try to run this as a program, but right now it's not even looking at this. That's because when we hit Run, processing says, in effect, whatever is in the editor window at this moment is the program. It's like it takes a snapshot and then it works from that snapshot. Anything you do afterwards is ignored until you hit Run again. So as long as this program is running, it doesn't care what we type into this window. I'll stop the program. If I run what we have now in the text editor, it's going to try to run all that random stuff that I just typed in, and it's going to give us an error because that's crazy junk. It's not programming. But I want to show you what it looks like when we have an error, so let's go ahead and try it. I'm going to hit the Run button, and we have errors. There are 4 things to notice about what happens when we have an error. First, the Run button does not turn orange. That's our first clue that the program isn't running. Processing is saying, I took a snapshot of what was in the editor, and then I had a problem. So the program doesn't even start running. Notice that there's no graphics window. As we said in the last video, no graphics window means no program running. The second thing that happens is that processing tries to find the line that confused it, and it highlights it for you. This is just a selection, as though I had swept the mouse over it. Well, that's nice of it, but it's only taking a guess. We know that the real beginning of the problem is several lines above. I think this is where it really first got confused. We can see that it struggled on beyond here until it finally decided it had no idea what was going on, and that was the line it highlighted. In addition to the highlighted line, processing's giving us some information to help us understand and fix what went wrong. I said in the last video that when there was an error, this gray bar would turn red and it would hold a message. And sure enough, there it is. Don't worry about the message itself right now. We'll get to that stuff later. But there is a message here, and that can help us determine what went wrong. Finally, processing displays this red type in the output area. Remember that when processing showed our output, it showed up in white. But when processing displays errors, they show up in red. I can tell you now, you're almost always going to completely ignore this red type. We'll talk more about it later, but it's almost never useful enough to even try to decipher, and I usually just completely ignore it. Remember that the program is not running now. Let's try to fix this by deleting all this junk. So I'll select it all and hit the delete key. Now watch what happens when I run the program again. The status bar will change from red to gray, the error will go away, and the output area will clear away the red type, replacing it with the white output of our program. So I'm going to come up here and press the Run button. It turns orange, and as expected, the rust bar turned gray, the message in the bar went away, and the red text in the output area disappeared, replaced by our output in white. Great, so our program is running again. If we have more text in any of these windows than they can hold, we'll get little scroll bars on the right-hand side. Now that we've fixed our program, I'll show you how to save it. First, we'll stop the program. We'll go up to the File menu, and from File, we choose Save As. You can use Save if you've already saved your program and you just want to save a new version, but Save As allows you to give it a name. Processing brings up the standard File Save dialog box. This is the standard Macintosh save, though there are a few extra bells and whistles here because I've customized my Mac. To save your program, you type the name into the Save As field. So I'll give this a name, and I'll call it First Program. Generally, it's a good idea to avoid spaces. If you use spaces in your names, processing will replace them with underscores. By default, processing will save your program in the default location that is set up in your preferences. For now, that's fine. In this case, it's going to put it into a folder called Processing. Here's the location of that folder. My computer is called Octomac. My disks are named after the Marx Brothers, and my main drive is called Chico. Inside of Chico, we have users, and inside of that is Andrew. That's my home directory. Inside of Andrew is Documents, a standard thing on the Mac, and when I installed Processing, it automatically made a subfolder inside of Documents called Processing, and that's the default location where it saves programs. So if I save First Program into this Processing folder and hit Save, the save is done. Notice that the title bar in our program is called First Program, and the tab says that as well. There's an important detail that you need to know about, or it can drive you crazy. Here's a look at the default directory where Processing saves files. Notice that at the top, we see the path Users Andrew Documents Processing as we'd expect. Inside is a folder called First Program. Inside that folder is the file we actually just saved. The file has the extension .pde. PDE stands for Processing Development Environment. Just like a music file ends with MP3 or a Word file ends with doc, processing files end with PDE. The important detail I need to tell you about is that processing files must sit inside of a directory with the same name. In our example, the file firstprogram.pde is inside a folder named First Program. It's the same name, but without the PDE at the end. Processing requires that firstprogram.pde is inside of a folder named First Program, because later on, when we make more complicated programs, processing is going to put other stuff inside that folder. To keep it all straight, this is the rule. Remember, we didn't make the folder. When we saved firstprogram.pde, processing automatically made the folder for us and put firstprogram.pde inside of it. The confusion I warned you about can come later if you want to rename your program. Suppose you decide that you'd rather call it Print A. Well, you can change the name of the folder to Print A, but if you do that, remember that you have to change the file inside to printA.pde as well. The folder name must match the file name, except for the PDE at the end. So now we're okay, because both the file and the folder are named Print A. If you change just one name but not the other, processing will get confused. It will typically try to be helpful, and if you try to open this, it will volunteer to create a new folder for you. But I find that leads to having lots of weird and mysterious folders lying around. To keep things simple, don't change your file or folder names. But if you must, be sure to change them both. Remember, as always, spelling and capitalization are important. Finally, when our program is saved and we're ready to turn off the computer, we want to quit processing itself. We can simply click on the Close button in the processing window and processing will shut down. Alternatively, we can go up to the menu and choose Processing, Quit Processing. That wraps up our tour of the essential aspects of the processing window and how it behaves. Now we're ready to get into processing itself.